And we'll just wait a few more seconds to see if we get a few more people on board. The chat's up, so that I will, I'll try to watch the chat as much as I can while I'm speaking. But sometimes, because my screens move around, I don't see the chat. And hopefully I'll make sure that I look at the chat before I sign off as well, because I know that I missed a few things on the chat, and that's why you saw some announcements. Another thing is that we had a problem, or I had a problem, and it was a technical problem with breakout rooms, and I didn't realize that my home computer didn't have the right modern characteristics to handle the new MS Teams. And what you need is Windows 11. And I wasn't aware of that. And that's why I couldn't find some of the toggles, because they don't come up on the old system. So what I have done is that I've purchased a new tower, and it has Windows 11. So by next week, I should have that capability, and hopefully we'll make our webinars a little more dynamic, all right, and a little more interactive. Okay, so we're starting with topic 3, and it's about what type of ownership. But just before I get started, does anybody have any kind of questions? You can actually put it on the chat, or you can unmute and ask me a question. Okay, we're all good. So if I can see some thumbs up, on your emoticons, and I'll get started. Okay, good, thank you. So the question is, what does type of ownership have to do with management principles? And it happens that a lot. Why? Because again, management is about situation, right? What situation you're in. And if you take a look at the different types of ownership, there's a myriad of different styles that need to be looked at to accommodate a style of ownership. So if you're looking at a family business, well then it's much different, because there's the people involved, and they're in most cases they're owner operators, and there's a lot less formality and a lot less systems because of investment to be able to work so that you need to manage in a different style than if you were at Amazon. And this is particularly important, so I want you to focus on assignment 2 on the manager self-audit, and question number 4 asks you that very question. And I'm hoping in this first little part of the webinar, I'm going to kind of convince you that yes, you need a different type of style. You're the same person, you have the same set of values, of core values, but the thing is that you need to adjust to a particular style to make it work. To be able to manage within the situation, within the conditions, and within the culture of an organization. And we'll talk about that. Okay, so what I'd like to do, and I don't have breakouts, but I'd like to start a discussion, and I call these white space discussions, and I'm hoping, as we go through the webinars, maybe get a hold of me even before the webinar and say, I'd like to discuss a certain part of maybe a part of my experience that I had as a manager or being managed, and can we talk about that? And then we'll do that in a white discussion. So how we're going to do this is that what I'd like to do is that I want to tell you my story, but then I want to hear your story. And I'm hoping that some of you will unmute and kind of provide some information, and you can follow these slides. So it's a group discussion I'm trying to create here, just overall a plenary, like everybody together. And I want to get your thoughts on how different jobs and different organizations, companies, we'll talk about how they require different approaches to management. And I'm hoping that then you'll see the reasons why we're covering these basic, what type of business or what type of organization, and that will give you a little more insights as to what they're doing. So let me start with my own experience, all right? So I started, as a student, and I worked at a bakery. And in some cases, I started very young, and I was on the route. So I actually sold bread. But then as I got older, I actually, I worked every machine in that bakery. All right. And now this bakery was a family owned bakery, and it was passed on from the father to three sons. And there were three brothers. And basically, I just want to describe, so the oldest brother was a traditionalist because, and I'll talk about that. The middle brother was more of an entrepreneur, and the younger brother was basically a modern management manager, right? And just think of it. Now you got three different people, and they're operating. They've got different perspectives. And when I worked, in different capacities for, under each one of those brothers, it was okay. But when it had to come together for the overall organization, they needed to manage differently. So I wasn't a manager there, but I got managed, right? So let's talk about that. The bakery operations run by the youngest brother was hands-on, and he was detail-oriented, that kind of leadership. And mainly it was around, production, efficiency, and effectiveness. So really that gets back to, Chester Barnard and our scientific management theorist on what should be done, Frederick. So the oldest brother, well, he was driven by tradition, and he was mainly involved in the relationships around that business, and the bent for producing these traditional Italian bakery products. Right, so more of a Arizona artisan approach to the bakery, and then the middle brother, well, he was all about driving performance in terms of growing the business and making those sales. So this required a different styles. Well, say if there was a general manager working for them, that general manager would have to be flexible and have to be and balance, across from being professional, but yet considering with the family dynamics. And I'll tell you, this being an Italian family, sometimes when those three brothers got together, it was a gong show. All right. So the decision making involved, it involved multi-family members, and a lot of times there were heated discussions. So, you couldn't really have a style that you need to have when you're working in Amazon as a manager, say in the logistics section. All right. So then I as another student job, I was actually a miner. I was a hard rock miner, and I did some drilling and some. I was on explosive teams, and that was with a company called INCO, or International Nickel Company of Canada. But there, the focus was on operational excellence. And this involved really safety protocols because of the dangers, efficiencies in operations because, they tried to get the most ore out of the ground, at a lowest cost. And the thing is that, back then sustainability wasn't talked about very much, but the culture was sort of a macro miner culture, championing production prowess. So it's that kind of manager that succeeded, that he could inspire and challenge those workers to produce more, right? So then, I went to college, and I got out of college, and I became a refinery worker, and that's when one of my first jobs, and again it was an International Nickel Company, and basically I was a third generation INCO employee. My grandfather worked there, my father worked there, all my cousins worked there. And then this organization had highly structured and safety-focused management style, because this was what they call a nickel carbonyl business, where they introduced gas to the raw materials and created 99.99% nickel. And so it was dangerous. And so the leaders were focused on regulations compliance and again, operational efficiency and managing the risks. So again, that style was different than myself working in, underground. They were more really driving production under there. I know they had safety issues, but that was going on. So that set the expectations for, and also this was a very highly unionized operation. And so what that meant was, you had management and you had the union, that had to work together, and it was a shared leadership, and that was the expectations. So you can see that that was a different style as well, because they had to include all these things, and it would be really hard to have a directive type manager style, when there's union conditions that you have to meet, so it has to be, collaborative. Okay, so then, I moved into the laboratory, and I was a senior chemist, and also now, the manager of that lab, focused on scientific expertise, and it was reliability of results. And why? Because it all wrapped up to, if we didn't get the right results, well, then they weren't profitable. So that lab manager, as well as promoting, safety and a collaborative environment, it was all about finding the best ways to have better, reliable, repetitive type results on the samples that came in. So that manager was always looking for the latest technology in laboratory analysis. So there was a development component in that management style there. And then, then I moved on to Ontario Hydronuclear, and I was a process engineer. And that was highly disciplined and, safety-centric management. And in nuclear, if there's one pump that does something, there's two other pumps that are there beside it in case that one pump fails. So there was double redundancy. And so that the managers prioritized, and, it looked at process redundancy and safety and regulatory compliance and crisis management while making sure everything was efficient. And then I left and I came to Alberta, and this is sort of like a middle career position. I worked in a coal-fired power plant, but I was now a specialist, all right, a support specialist for all the power plants. And there was a lot of regulatory compliant and efficiency driven type of management style to make sure that everything got done, the way it had to get done, because there was reliability involved and environmental compliance and a lot of cost management. But here's an interesting part, all right? Alberta Power was not unionized at the time, and we're going to talk about clan culture, in later topics. But clan culture is all about, basically the elders managing by example and supporting their employees and helping them be successful. So it was a very supportive environment. And so that kind of style lent itself. It ran almost like a family organization, and you were motivated as an employee by the clan culture support and the expectations put on you by the elders. So again, different style for a different type of organization. I'm sure that at say Saskatchewan Power, or maybe even in Ontario Power for coal production, I know that it was much different. It was much more directive there. And oh, by the way, Alberta Power had some of the best operational statistics for their coal-fired, and far surpassed Ontario Hydro because of the culture that they have. All right, and then one of my later jobs, I went to TELUS. I did strategic planning. I was a director of operations, and then moved on to be an assistant vice president, and then a vice president. And this organization was definitely dynamic because we were going through convergence. Customer-focused management style was the order of the day, and leaders, they drove innovation, and they managed technological advancements and ensured that there was high quality customer service. And this culture was driven by competitiveness, so that you really had to move. You really had to, the employees were encouraged to be the best that they could be and very productive. And so it took a certain amount of a management style to make that happen. Okay. And then now, I'm teaching, and, so I taught at Phoenix and Meredith universities and Georgian College. It's more of a collaborative and student-centered approach. The leaders are more focused on academic excellence and student engagement, and I think you can see that in the values that are shared here at Red Deer, and effective administration. So really what I'm trying to say is that, I've worked for, every organization had unique needs and a different management style that were driven by a unique organizational culture. and the stakeholder and competitive demands of their markets or their industries, right? So that's where I'd like you to kind of come in now, and then let's talk about, I'm hoping that one or two of you will kind of open up, unmute, and say, well, what have you experienced, or how did it make you feel? What did you learn from the management styles that you either had or you were managed by? And then can you comment on how you felt in that organization? Because fit is a really big, important part. You need to understand who you are, and then understand how you can fit into that organization. And again, I told you that, you should have at least, 4 other management styles apart from your predominant management style to be able to be flexible enough to, adhere to any kind of situation that comes up. Were you able to characterize the style of management used, and then what worked and what didn't work? So I'm going to leave this slide up. If anybody can just unmute, let's see what we can hear. Okay, anybody, or just go to chat and then mention something, and maybe I can comment on it. Okay, we're a quiet bunch here tonight. I need one brave student to be able to, kick this off.
I could talk about my job that's kind of changed the way that the management's kind of going.
Oh, thanks, Dylan. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Basically, my work is kind of adjusted to this. It's called a blue culture within the workplace, and basically we had to go through this training as to understand how they previously managed the workforce to where it is now, and basically 10 years ago the workplace that I worked in was a lot of kind of just your manager told you what you do, and if you didn't do it he would fire you and get someone else. Because I work in a grocery store, so that was kind of how it is. And well, I didn't work there at the time, but now they more care about the workers, and a lot of it is more focused around accommodating the employees, because now it's harder to find people for those positions.
Ah, yeah, okay.
So that's kind of how my manager workforce has kind of changed over the years here.
Yeah,
So it's
so
kind of they have a good system between the manager and the people below them, and it's a clear understanding of who my boss is. I'm not getting asked by 5 different people to do things. It's clear and cut.
okay, and how does that make you feel overall? Do you work at a good level because of it, or does it make
Well,
any difference? Or
it's definitely easier if I have an issue. I know I can go to my boss, and it's they have to listen kind of thing. It's not they just push you aside.
yeah, yeah.
So that it makes at least solving issues easier.
Okay, that sounds good. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Dylan. I appreciate your input. Okay, so that, it still took up a fair amount of time, so we'll move on. But again, what I wanted you to get out of this is that understanding, saying, well, why are we doing type of organization? We're talking about management principles, but the whole thing is that each type of organization, demands a different style of management, and that's the main reason. Okay. All right. So again, we're talking now. We're seeing, well, where does this work? How does this? So we're still at the beginning, but we're not talking so much about the different modes of management or types of management at this point in time. But we're really going to talk about the small and medium enterprise and the family business versus large manufacturing. But you can see here, international business, has flourished along, as we got. As we got into, the 2000s and beyond, and international business or global trading is expanding at, at a logarithmic rate. And what that means is it's not a straight line. It goes up like this, right? And the more years that we go through in this, world economy, it's going to be more and more. So that, that's the way to look at it. Now, having said that, it's not just big business in global. 98% of small business or of global traders in the U.S., 98% are small business businesses. And the thing is that they've got the capabilities in today's world because of the technology. And now you don't have to own everything. You can rent it. So you could rent, an enterprise management system service rather than have to build it and run it yourself. So, that's where we're going with that. So I wanted you to know that, all right, in topic 3, there's 2 e-text presentations, and they're in the in the topic sort of weekly commentary area and under topic 3. And the first one is a supplement B for fundamentals of management. It's a good, I don't know, maybe 12 slides. There's a lot of information there that will help you with the content of this course, right? I've talked about, on the topic inside of Blackboard, but if you look at the commentary presentations that we're taking right now and the referenced PowerPoints, that's mainly a big part of the content that you'll have to know. So this is a good thing to cover. So there's 2 presentations tied to topic 3. The first one is supplement B, or supplement 1B, and the next one is supplement 1C. So this is about small and medium-sized enterprises, and the C is about entrepreneurship. And I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship a little bit, and we're going to look at one of the theorists that's covered in topic 3, Albert Shapiro. But just before that, I want to give you a little bit of information, and this is, for all you people that are looking at starting your own businesses. I wanted to make you aware that there's all kinds of information, and there's different kinds of training that could really help you. So one of them is, I call these helpful hints. Hopefully, it's a professional project management certificate, and here's some links to go see what that's all about. But project leadership skills are just in our new economy, especially when we're looking at you look at Google or you look at Amazon, or they're project organizations, and if you have those kind of capabilities, you'll be able to really get into that top 20% that I told you about, because you're going to learn, in this PMP, they call it PMP certification, you learn project leadership skills, negotiating skills, budget and scheduling, risk management skills, critical thinking and problem solving, all the things around the project thing, quality and task management. So just wanted to share that with you. And also, since we're going to be talking about entrepreneurs, I wanted to introduce you to Michael Gerber, right? And what I found over the books that I've read, this is one of the easiest book to read about and understand, and the things, especially if you're starting your own business, the things that you need to do to be successful. And he gives you the statistics, within 5 years, more than 80% of those businesses that start up in the US, they fail. And he gives you, some tools. And what I've done is, this is a link right here to the summary of this book. So you don't have to buy the book or anything, just go to that link and you'll find out about it. And I'm going to talk about that. But again, really what you need to understand in business is the business model. And the business model will drive, in some regards, the management styles and drive the management principles that need to be looked at based on the type of business that you're in. So that's why I put this slide up. And if you want to know anything about, a business model, this guy's my hero, Alex Osterwalder, and he's come up with this one-page business model. And you can Google this guy, and you can Google this business model. And in my consulting, I've used this with many, many small businesses and some medium-sized businesses, because in a lot of small businesses, the owner almost doesn't even know outright what the model is, and how could he describe that to employees if he doesn't? And this is one way of doing it. Okay, and another commercial here is the BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada. They have all kinds of information that you can draw from. Even when you're doing your courses, or you have to do a marketing plan and marketing or whatever, there's all kinds of information. Here's the link, and there's free tools and advice for entrepreneurs. so that there's, and look at all the things that they cover, business strategy and planning, marketing and sales, start or buying a business, operations, entrepreneurial skills. So there's all kinds of things that you can learn from them. You can download an entrepreneur's toolkit as well to do that. And we're going to talk about benchmarking. And benchmarking, it identifies where your company is right now. And then you go out and you take a look at where do you want to be, and you look at best-in-class organizations and understand what's making them successful. And you take that learning back and you try to see if it's applicable in your organization. Sometimes what they're doing doesn't apply. But you compare your own operations to that of competitors, and it gives you the great ideas. And it's an important skill to have. And I've been on teams where we actually hired consultants to go out and take a look at what we're doing and what we were doing in the telecom business to help us do better. And we learned, we brought in some of the best practices that our consultants found and used that, in our service delivery and in other areas, and really paid off for us. So I wanted you to know about that. I wanted you to know about that. Here's the link. Okay. So now we're just going to get into, the topic 3 itself. And you can see that there's going to be, 8 Pearson Rebel surveys that you need to do for next Monday. And what you need to understand is that, these surveys will help give you some insights about yourself, and they'll allow you to do better in answering assignment number 2. All right. And that's the manager style self-audit. So you're not just doing that, just because we want you to do that and you're going to get a mark. It really gives you a sense, this is the baseline that I've been talking about that you need to do. And I'm going to talk about locus of control in the next slide. But, really know where you are in terms of stress management. That's a big effect on people, especially in today's world. Gaining power and influence, how to get things done through people, creative style indicator, and, how you see where your creative style is, and then that'll give you some baseline to where you want to improve it. Innovation, if you're creative, how well are you at, or how good are you at problem solving? And then, your leadership style inventory. So those are really good baselines. They're going to help you, on this assignment number 2 that's due in October 21. So I just wanted to kind of really focus in on this locus of control survey. And why? Because internal locus of control is associated with higher effectiveness in leadership, and you could get better group performance and entrepreneurial activity. And if you're looking at going in that area in your career, it's really good to really get a sense of what is your local locus of control. And there's it's basically 2 ends of the bookends of the spectrum. One is if you just have an internal locus of control, well then that means you have the power, you can make things happen. But if you're thinking you have an external locus of control and you think everything is predetermined, or you're tied up into fate, well then you're never going to really get out of the box and be able to lead people. All right. So it's the degree to which people believe that they that they have control, or they're or is there's external forces controlling their lives. So this is a key aspect of your personality that you should understand, and then get to know where you are on that level, and then where do you decide where you want to take it. Okay, so that's those 8 Rebel surveys, and now there's 2 participation activities, and oh by the way, they're to be done in teams. Okay, and I want to refer you to the next slide. So what I'm going to ask you to do is that I want you to select a business of your choice, and I'll show you in the next slide on what I mean by that. And then it's this selection of that business you're going to actually use in next week's participation topics 4A and 4B. All right, and what you do then, you can either pick a small business, or you can pick a family business. But I want you to describe that business, and then you can list 10 issues of manage that particular business, whether it's a small business, in a private area, or it's a family business, and then a short reason why the group chose that idea. And again, you want to use ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever, you go ahead and do that. And then here's what I want you to remember when you're selecting that specific business. All right. So again, this tells you you're going to use that business selection in participation activities 4A and 4B in topic 4, but select specific, the specificity of the business that you need to go. It can be a family business, it can be an existing business, or it can be a business that you'd like to create and launch, right? But the thing is, go to topic 4 and figure out, what you're going to be asked for there, because when you pick that business to create and launch, you should, in 4A, you should know what the role and mandate of that vision is going to be, of that, or the role and mandate and vision of that organization that you'd like to create. And then also, you're going to have to create an organizational structure in 4B for that business that you selected. So that means that this business should be at least 5 people or more to really make the structure meaningful. I mean, if it's just a, one-person business, the structure is one person, right? So we're going to get into that. So I wanted you to understand the implications of your selection. So any questions about that? Again, I'm looking at the chat. You can chat or you can just unmute and ask. Okay, we're all right on that one? Okay. Okay, Von Joseph, go ahead. Unmute and ask the question.
Sir, does the necessary business will be here in Canada, or can be possible in our country, Philippines, or
it's possible in your country? Yeah, it doesn't have to be in Canada. It's what it is that just describe it to the point where you'll be able to do 4A and 4B and meet those conditions. Okay. Good question.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really good question. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to 3B. Okay, so we're talking about entrepreneurs, and in a couple of slides down, we're going to be looking at Shapiro, and we're going to actually be looking at Michael Gerber as well, because there's some great things that he could really help you with if you decide that you want to be an entrepreneur. But here's the thing about entrepreneurs, all right? We're all entrepreneurs, and it depends on the type of organization we work for. So the traditional entrepreneur, like Elon Musk, all right, he's a founder of an organization or many organizations, and he grows them. That's the typical definition. But there's an in-organization entrepreneur that we call intrapreneurs. And the best example that I can come up was, and this is a long time ago, but the Ford Mustang, it was the vision of Lee Iacocca, and he was just but he was an executive inside of the Ford Group, and he created the Ford Mustang, and that's just one of the things that he's done, and so that an intrapreneur, will help grow the business and create innovative offerings, right? So just myself, when I was at Alberta Power, I created this product. It was a turnkey engineering operation where I would go to natural gas suppliers and say, "Oh, you're running your compressors by gas right now, and you could be selling that gas. So I have an electric option for you where you're not only going to save money, but it's a turnkey. I'm going to make it all possible for you. I'll bring in the engineering. I'll have it built for you, and I'll show you how to run it. And then all you have to do is just buy electricity from us, and then you pay the bills on that piece." So I essentially was an intrapreneur. And oh, by the way, I sold the first product. It was $780,000 a year revenue, and if we would have caught the right window of gas prices, it would have taken off like crazy. But it just kind of fizzled out. So that's what that's all about. So again, why do people start businesses? Well, there's a myriad of reasons. Sometimes, just because they don't want to, they want to do their own thing. It's personal objectives. Sometimes, they want to make sure that they're in control of their destiny and they know that they can build wealth, on their own rather than work for someone else. Or sometimes it's just independence, or just, somebody has a side gig, just to bring in additional income, or they want to help their family, or again, either provide products to really have, from a social benefit, or even because part of the world is doing it somewhere else and you want to do it in your own country, right? So there's various reasons, and again here, so look at this key findings. This is right out of supplement 1B, which I'm asking you to read, and I won't make any bones about it. There's probably some test questions around in here. So look at Canada's 1.2 million small and medium enterprises. They generate 45% of GDP in Canada. 86% are exporters, right? So they're into the global trading piece. And by the way, I mean, Canada is predominantly a trading nation. And if we didn't trade outside of our areas, we wouldn't have the standard of living we do have today. So there's all these statistics that I want you to kind of go through and look at. And you can see now again, so I've done some highlighting, in terms of, and know the terminology, that's in here. What is an SME? What is, there's a few other terminologies that you should know of, and get a sense of, what they're capable of doing. And now we get into, the types of business ownership. And here, and why? Because you have a different management style, for a different type of organization that you're running or managing, right? So there's sole proprietorship, and basically that's a company. Like I have a sole proprietorship right now, and that's where I do my consulting. And what it is though is that if I don't have any protection, I'm not incorporated. So basically, everything that I own is part of all the things that I own, like my house and my car. So it makes you vulnerable. So how do I get around that? Corporate insurance. All right. So corporate insurance, if I'm doing some particular consulting work, I use what they call errors and omissions insurance, in case that, I did something that caused damages for a client, and then, I can rely on the insurance to protect me. And then there's a limited liability partnership. And, we're going to talk about partnerships. That's where 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people come together and create a partnership. But the limited liability partnership is that, let's say I was in a limited liability partnership. So I created this company called Home Life Security, and I had one other partner. So I took out limited liability partnership. So if the company got sued, I was protected, and from my partner and everything else. So I had limited liability because I got that for myself. And then there's the straight partnership, and then there's a limited liability corporation. And then you need to understand, and that's where you have more protection. So if people sue the company, you as an individual are not pulled into that because it's it's an incorporation. And what happens around incorporations is that the government expects you to file reports, annual reports and board reports, under a limited liability corporation. So there's some responsibilities and there's some costs associated. And so when I first started my consulting company, I was incorporated. And then as I just started working by myself, then I shifted over to a sole proprietorship, and then made sure I had the insurance to protect me. And then there's 2 types of corporations, and you should know the difference to this. There's a C corporation and the S corporation. All right. Let me just show you, what that's all about. The C corporation, pays corporate income tax, and the employees pay their income tax. With an S corporation, the shareholders pay the tax. There's a pass through. So you should understand the difference between these two. And you can see that this is, this is highlighted in here. So here's a bit more about the partnership, 2 or more co-owners, the individual share risks. That's the unlimited liability, but then you can go to a limited liability where you can, insure yourself against, maybe your partner does something really crazy and the company gets sued. Well, then you have limited liability and you are not pulled into having to, to sell your house to, pay for the damages kind of thing. So that's how that works. And then different types of arrangements. There's licensing, and that's the rights for use. So you take a look at Microsoft, right? Well, they will have a company, say in France, where they will license all the software rights to that French company, and then that French company will sell, say, in their territory of France, right? So so what does that mean? That means that Microsoft doesn't have to invest anywhere inside of France. So they have, it's a little bit more remote, less risk, but less control, right? And then franchising, and I think we know all about franchising in terms of it's all around us, especially in the fast food industry. And it's a form of licensing. But if you take a look at like Tim Hortons is a franchise. So there's a franchisor, that's the holding company that provides a franchise to the franchisee. All right. Now, in that agreement, not only does the franchisee have to pay royalty on what they sell to the franchisor, but they have to buy product from the franchisor. So all the coffee, all the food, all comes and is sold from the franchisor, and that's how the franchising business works. Okay. And so what's the advantages? Well, the franchisor has standards that they could meet, and the franchisee, doesn't have to do it all by themselves. And inside of that premium that they pay, or money that they send, they're getting corporate marketing as well, so they don't have to worry about those kind of things. And then there's just management contracts. So paying for managerial assistance. So, a company like in Canada called SNC Lavalin Engineers, they'll go out into Libya and they'll build a power plant under contract with the government. Okay, and that's where that is. Okay, and then inside of that contracting, let's talk about SNC Lavalin again. They may have a turnkey operations. So when they contract in to build that power plant for the Libyan government, they'll say, okay, we'll look after it all. We will buy the land, we will buy all the machinery, we'll do all the design, we'll get it up and running, we'll recruit people from Libya to run the plant, we'll train them, and at the end of that, when the power plant is operational, then you pay us a large fee, all right? And that's a turnkey operation. And then joint ventures. Joint ventures are, where you have maybe two companies. So if you take a look at Saturn, all right, Saturn vehicle, which is now it's defunct, but it was a joint venture between Toyota and General Motors. And there's different reasons for coming in to a joint venture. So if you take a look at Toyota, well, they wanted entry into North American market. And what did General Motors want? They wanted all the intellectual property around how you do quality. So it was a synergistic piece. But here's what you need to know about joint ventures, all right? If it's a 50-50 ownership, then no one has control. And sometimes you might have two parties that, they'll be fighting over an issue. One party will say, no, our strategic direction should go this way. And the other party will say, no, we didn't sign up for that. And then they finally, they solve that in the courts, or they dissolve. So when I worked for Alberta Power, which was an ATCO company, it was a condition that when ATCO, went into a joint venture, they would always have controlling interest, even if it was 51% versus 49%, right? And that way, they could drive, the strategic direction of the organization and fit that into their overall company strategy. And then there's equity alliances. And what equity alliances are all about, there are, so it's sort of a joint venture of many partners, but there may be one of those partners that actually owns a little of each one of those businesses so that they have control over the overall strategic direction of the project. All right. And that helps solidify collaboration because, because they have control, they will drive, they'll drive the direction. And then this is just a little drawing to show you is that, as you get away from being wholly owned, all right, you have very little control, but then, you can, you have, very little risk as well. So there's the trade-offs. And the whole idea of this is that if you're a manager running a management contract, you've got your client to think about, and your management style, again, will be dictated by that contract and that type of industry you're in, that kind of business that you're doing, and that kind of project that you're on. So all these things have an impact on what management style you have, whether, you're in a joint venture where you have to be very, very collaborative, collaborative management style right across the board, into a licensing, where you have to be very subjective to the licensing agreements and work strictly to those areas. Otherwise, you'll find the business in court, having not satisfied what the licensor demanded. Right. So those are the kind of things that you need to worry about. Okay, so getting started, what do? You start your own business, or maybe you buy an existing business, or you purchase a franchise. And when I started Home Life Enviro, I looked at getting a water store franchise. But then looking into it, the equity that I had to put into that and the conditions that I had to satisfy, I had no capability to go and produce other types of offerings or whatever. So I decided to start my own business. And rather than even buying an existing business, because I had a whole vision around, what this Enviro home store would look like, and it was the full, it was helping people, become more environmentally conscious and environmentally responsible. And I ran that business for about 7 years. Okay, so here's the pros and cons of by starting your own. And don't start your own. So yeah, starting your own, you define the nature of the business. I did that, but problems in finding the right business or problems associated with assembling the resources. So it took me a long time to get things up and running to run that business, because everything had to be done by myself and the people that I brought into the business. Right. So that's one piece. Start by a franchise. All right. So franchise, well, everything's there for you, but the physical facilities may be old, or there's different things that that you run into. So I'd like you to go through this and just here in terms of what's the difference between licensing and franchising. I hope that I explained that. Licensing basically, you're allowing people to use your offering. It might be a physical product, or you may be like the taxi business, right? You're licensing, the privilege to operate in a particular city, versus franchising. There's more interplay between the franchisor and the franchisee. It's a license to carry the brand, but also there's a commitment to be able to buy and the products from the franchisor, and then to stick to the strict business of that particular business, like Tim Hortons. Okay, so here, there's more about running a family business, and there's different decisions, and I tried to describe this bakery that I worked in, but there's decisions around the design, the design, how you're going to make decisions, what values you have, how you're going to communicate to each other. How are you going to, one of the biggest things in Canada is that these family businesses start, and then the founder gets older and has no idea how to transfer that business to the next generation, or the children, or whether they should sell it, and so that you should have this plan in mind, right from the start on what you're going to do. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, what Michael Gerber has to say about that as well. Okay, so those are different types of family ownership. So sole ownership, one family member owns everything, everyone works for them. A partnership, you have to actively have, participate to be an owner. Concentrated, any descendant can be an owner, but a subset has ownership control. And so that, in this bakery, a lot of the children were working in the business, but the only owners were the three brothers. And so that was concentrated. And then distributed. So here's, if that would have gone to the next step in that bakery, they would have sold share or offered shares to the children in there. So the children and the brothers, all own the business. So there's different ways of looking at that. And when this changes, then the dynamics change. When the dynamics change, the management styles have to change, right? So, that's the key thing to understand there, and it's all about the amount of involvement, so how involved is the family in governing day to day? The more family members, the longer decisions take. The less family involved, the more wealth inequality across the family. And, I saw a lot of issues amongst those three families about how the business was being run. I grew up in that business, basically. I was 12 years old. When I left, it's because I graduated from college, right? So, there was a lot of things. There's a lot of challenges. And so what you need to do is you got to make sure that the rules are established right from the start, that there's boundaries. And then you got to make sure that, that it's a clear purpose for that organization. So there's a lot of things that you need to work about. This is just a technique, for engagement in a particular organization. And what this is that, there's different types of stakeholders in a business. It could be the direct owner. It could be people on the board for that business, if it's incorporated. It could be the management, like there's maybe a sales manager or a general manager or whatever, and then members of the family, right? So what a RACI is, it's based on these words: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So when you have different types of decisions, there's different people involved. And if you set this up, then you have a real clear sense of order in terms of getting a particular decision made, and everyone is satisfied, so that you'll get to a logical outcome, and much easier and much more sort of rigorous in that thing. So look at the sale of the business. Well, the owner is responsible for selling it. The board is accountable to make sure that all the owners are appropriately compensated in those things. The management need to be consulted, because they want to decide whether they want to stay on with say the new owner, or they want a say in their incentive program on what's going on. And then the family members have to be informed. Okay, so you can see selecting board members. Well, that's between the CEO and the board itself. Hire and fire a CEO. Well, the family has to be informed. So that's what a RACI is all about. We use these a lot, or use them a lot. I did, in different projects that I worked on. And again, your learning charter. Really, a lot of the elements of that are in a project charter, and you'll surely find some RACI pieces in a project charter. Succession planning is a big deal, and it's not looked at early enough in the history or the life cycle of the business. And you need to look at that in terms of in terms of the type of business that the family business is in, and then how you want to do that. Do you want to do a living trust? There's all kinds of income tax implications around that piece, and so that when you do bring up a succession planning, you need good resources. You need a good lawyer, and you need a strong accountant that understands the implications, the tax implications of succession planning, and the lawyer would guide, the legalities of how that succession planning should go. Okay, so you need a clear exit plan for family members to leave the organization. Whether you pass the business on, or sell the company, or you're actually, a lot of people just close their business. So those are the things that you need to worry about. So that's the business component, or organizational structures part of what's possible. And again, the biggest lesson there is the different management styles to accommodate each type of organizational structure and mandate. Okay, so I talked a lot here. Any questions about that piece? Any questions about assignment 2? You can unmute. Okay, like I said, once I get my new desktop up and running, we're going to do a little more, room breakouts and group discussions. Okay, but I want to bring it back to, ask Coach Gary. Like, go to that discussion forum and place some questions on there, and then email me to make sure that I know about it, and then I'll go in and I can answer these questions, and hopefully the different students in the class could get some benefit out of some insights that I can share. Okay, so now we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, and the thing is that it's one thing to just, hey, I'm going to start a business. I'm a pretty smart person, and what you need to do is, there's all these different steps when you're actually going to start a business, and I guess this is, if you go through this, and you can find modules on how to actually get this business going, and you know what, if you want any more specific information about that, just approach me, because I've done a lot of business plans for small business startups and those kind of things. So I've lived a lot of these different things. Okay, so I'm not going to go through every detail of the piece, but have a look at what goes on, and it really gives you some insights of what's important, so that you don't strand some effort somewhere because you didn't think of something. Right? It's always better to learn from other people's mistakes than make them yourselves. And the best thing that you could do if you're going to start up a business is do some benchmarking, and that's why I brought it up. Take a look at what are some of the businesses doing that you'd like to grow or build, and then find out about what's going on, and research and how they're making decisions, and what their challenges are and what their issues are. And something else that you need to understand too is that different industries have different standard profit margins. So you might pick an industry, if you had two industry A and industry B, let's say dry cleaners versus a coffee shop, right? Dry cleaners likely has a higher profit margin, like 35%, versus a coffee might be 25%. So you're more apt to make more profit just being in the right industry. And those are the kind of things that you should think about going through. And then what you need to think about as well is is what's it going to cost to bring in new customers, in terms of the cost of marketing and the cost of actually selling to those customers. How profitable is that going to be? And then understand. Here's the key thing, and you can see that it's highlighted in yellow, and in minimum viable product. So normally what you start in is that you will start an offering, and you don't include everything. You include what you think is going to sell in your value proposition. Why? Because when you add on those features, then you can add on price as well, right? And there's this concept called good, better, best. It's been around for like 50 years. And what you do is you look at building a good product. And then once you get market traction, you can say, oh, I can make this better. And oh, if you want this feature, you just pay me 10% more for this offering, right? And that's how you get around it. But normally how you go about all of this is that to build this minimum viable product, and just remember, you might even see MVP on a test question, and now you're going to know what this is, okay? But you start with a proof of concept so that you see these entrepreneurs, what they'll do is they've got an idea for a great product, they'll build it, and then they'll test it. And then they'll have users test it. And if the users say, hey, this is great, well, then you've proved the concept, all right? And then what you do then is you build, the actual prototype, what that is going to look like when you actually manufacture it, all right? And then that prototype reflects, this minimum viable product, in what you're going to offer in terms of value to the customer. So those are the kind of things that you need to work on. And the thing is, here's just a reference for you. You need to look at the 5 whys, or the 5 W's. I mean, why, what, who, when, and where. And that's how to systematize your business. Okay. And Timon's model, this is right in the topic 3 slide deck in Blackboard, and you take a look at the opportunity, and based on that opportunity, what kind of team do you need? Based on that opportunity and team, what kind of resources do you need? And then the business plan just fits all the gap. And you can see from the team, you need to have leadership. From the opportunity on the team, you need creativity. From the opportunity, the resources, you need communication. So this is a great, model to kind of take a look at, to be able to, when you start your own company. So let me talk again about Michael Gerber. Now, so I showed you this slide, but I want you to, and again, here's another, here's the link, to his to a summary for his books. But here's the things that you should know about, being an entrepreneur. So normally what happens is, okay, so let me talk about myself. So, I had an expertise in water treatment. I know how to purify water and steam and whatever. And I knew a lot about it. And I knew how to build, water treatment systems. So I was a technician. That's what got me in the business. And the thing is, and that's that's where you start. You like to get in the work and the nuts and bolts, and that's ideal for the execution. So you start this business, but all of a sudden now you got to bring people into that business because it's growing. Well, then not only are you a technician, you have to become a manager, because you got to manage these people to make sure that the business is sustainable. To make sure that the employees are productive and effective in what they're doing. Okay, and now that business is growing again, and Gerber calls it being the entrepreneur, but really I call it about being the visionary, and that's where strategic thinking and critical thinking comes in, and there's where you get a sense of, how am I going to expand that business? I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of businesses that expand really quickly die because they haven't really looked at the implications of the expansion and what they're going to need to be able to sustain the business, right? And what Gerber says is that normally the businesses that fail, the owner or the principal is more of a technician, and he'll be, he or she will be 70% technician, 20% manager, and 10% entrepreneur. So they didn't figure it out right. And what he's saying is, you have to work on the business as much as in the business. So you need to split your hats to, a third being a visionary entrepreneur, a third being a manager, and a third being the technician. And that's the success formula to be around in 10 years from now, right? So this book, I'll tell you, it's one of the best books that I've ever come across, and that's why I'm so excited to tell you about it. And then here's the 7-step business. development program that Gerber talks about. You can go through that and determine your primary aim. It's all about purpose, and you need to align with your purpose and those kind of things. So again, don't lose sight as a technician owning the business. And here's another thing that he says is that when you build these businesses, build them as if you are a franchisor. And what does that mean? Is that build a business in terms of, it's got written policies, it's got written procedures. Everyone knows what to do, because most people who want to sell their business, and these are like single business owners, is that they want to sell their business, but the person who takes over the business can't run it unless that the owner is still there, right? And there's nothing laid out. But if you design that business like a franchise, well, then everything is self-sufficient, right? And you use the McDonald franchise operation. Gerber explains that every detail is taken care of. From the French fries, how long they're going to be, and how many pickles to add to, when you pay the bills, and how do you order the materials, and everything is systematized, and so that you can take that business and show the value to the owner and show the returns without you being involved in it, and that will help the sale of your business. So that's one key thing. Just a couple of things. Now we're getting near the end, but wanted to show you this. This is sort of some of my work. You hear about all this, business planning, but when it comes down to, these are the three main things that you need to understand. The value proposition is, what's your offering? How is it going to satisfy customers? And we're going to talk about, the ideal customer in one of the topics. And so that, your value proposition has to mirror, what your ideal customer is looking for. And then the strategy, and this is what gives you competitive advantage. And then the business model is you need. So if you get all this right, then it's all about execution. And execution can be kind of administered in the vision and the mission and the goals and the objectives. So this is a key thing. Value proposition, what are you offering, and why is it better than than anybody else providing that service or product in the market? How are you bringing that to market, and how are you keeping competitive advantage as you're going through? And then what's your business model to show that it's robust, and that you're going to be able to sustain this business because it's a robust business model. It has all the right elements of the formula to be successful. And in terms of how's the money coming in, what's it coming in from, how's the money going out, what's it going to, and that's what your business model will do. And then here's just a little bit more around that. So Shapiro, he's in the topic 3 slide deck, and then have a look. He talks a lot about what drives the entrepreneur. How does the entrepreneur take initiative? How to deal with risk, and look at internal locus of control, right? So that's why this piece, that survey is so important. So have a look at that. What are your intentions before you start? What's the purpose that you have? And if you're true to the purpose, and you can explain, Simon Sinek talks about the power of why. If you can explain to people why you're doing something, they will follow you, rather than saying just do it, right? Okay, and then here's the different types of entrepreneur. Curious entrepreneur, ready to go entrepreneur, the joiner, the amplifier, the corporate entrepreneur, and then this is the intrapreneur that I talked about. That's the corporate entrepreneur. Okay, so I won't go over that, but then here's some an entrepreneurial event. You should do it. You want to do it. You can do it, right? And then how that goes through in terms of what are some of the negative displacements. How did you get there? Well, a lot of people get fired and then they start their own business. So that's how they got started. Or between things, you're out of the you're a contractor. your contract ends, all right? So you need to go somewhere else, or someone wants you to come into the business, and then here's the things that you need to consider: the culture, the peers, the colleagues. Do you have a mentor? And then how do you make this feasible? And then you start that company. Okay, so that's it for this topic. And again, I wanted you to make that connection between the types of businesses and the type of ownership that gives you the type of business that really dictates what the management styles are needed to run them differently. And I made the comment about look at question 4 in that assignment 2. It asks you what would be different from running a family business to Amazon. You might be the same person, you might have the same core values, but your management style has to change to meet the demands of a family business, either the dynamics, the culture that family has created in that business, the industry that they're in, the type of businesses that they're running, and the environmental conditions that are upon it. Like during COVID, that family business would run a lot different during COVID than it would in regular times, during a pandemic. And then going from a smaller operation that doesn't have the resources to have the systems and the capabilities, that an Amazon would have in terms of an enterprise resource management system with all the affiliated, customer relationship management and financial package and PeopleSoft and run the people side. You're going to manage that differently. And we're going to talk about management style in terms of where technology can make the connection between the manager and the people. So if you take a look at a call center, a manager can manage 100 people in the call center. Why? Because the system is tracking the performance of each call center member, and you can work through the system to be able to manage those employees. Whereas if you're in a consulting firm where it's a very specialized area with only a few experts, then as a manager, you don't have that expertise, and you need to rely on manage them, from a democratic point of view, and allow them to be creative in finding their solutions. So those are the kind of things that you need to consider. Okay. All right. So any questions at all? Any questions about today's topic? Any questions about future assignments or the groups? Had a lot of work to do with a fair amount of students, people going in and out of groups and whatever. I'm hoping that we're at the point now where we're stabilized. But again, and just a reminder as well, if you're going to communicate with me, please use my RDP email. Why? Because I'm on my iPhone constantly, and the only time I get to see your notice in Blackboard is when I'm in my home office looking at Blackboard. And I'll get back to you. I promise I'll get back to you a lot quicker. And the more information you can give me when you send me an email, maybe I could do it when I'm not even in my home office and get, satisfy your questions. So, that's where that is as well. Okay. And again, please, use the discussion forum of Ask Coach Gary. I'd like to see you use that. And if there's no questions, then we'll leave it at that, and I'll sign off. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording. And again, you'll find, the YouTube channel link tomorrow on, on Blackboard, and I'll make an announcement for that.